Hello and welcome to this briefing introductory webinar focusing on the International Diploma in Financial Crime Prevention from the International Compliance Association. My name is Becca Dare. I am a Director of International Compliance Training. So in terms of today, we're going to talk you through the course syllabus and the journey you will take during your study on the program. So we'll look at not just the syllabus, but the workshops, the assessments and assignments and examination, as well as highlighting the approach you can take to your studies. So in terms of the International Diploma in Financial Crime Prevention, if the course is being undertaken on a face-to-face basis, you will have 4 one-day workshops which will be delivered by an experienced practitioner. If you're undertaking the program via the distance learning route, you'll receive additional course workbooks as well as recorded webinars per unit of the program. The program involves 2 written assignments, which we'll explore shortly, as well as a 3-hour, 15 minutes open book examination at the end of the program. The course will typically take 9 months to complete. So let's have a look at the actual course content in terms of the syllabus. The course is broken down into 4 modules and then in turn into sub-units. So the first module is really putting the subject in context. It's looking at the legal definitions of financial crime. What does the law actually define financial crimes as? But also the latest thought in terms of how do corrupt politicians actually engage in corruption and bribery? How do fraudsters think and actually work? We'll look at some of the latest theories on the behavioural and psychological profiles of fraudsters. We'll examine how organised crime seeks to hide their criminal assets through money laundering, as well as how they engage in cyber attacks and electronic crime. We'll also then move on to look at the bigger picture in terms of who are the international organisations who involve themselves in attempting to prevent financial crime. So we'll explore the role of the United Nations, the European Union, and the Financial Action Task Force. We'll look at not just how they've shaped international law and regulation, but we'll talk about what, on a practical level, they mean for practitioners and organisations trying to fight financial crime. How can we use the tools and techniques that these organisations provide? We will, though, look at the international legal models, conventions and standards, and we will focus on a range of key jurisdictions and discuss the extraterritorial application of the law in many of these jurisdictions. Now, again, during the program, you'll also have the ability to focus on specific jurisdictions of interest to you, maybe the jurisdiction you're currently practicing in, and indeed also to focus on a specific industry sector of interest to you. The second module will drill down and look at the practical application of the international standards. We'll look at money laundering, the key concepts around prevention and detection of money laundering, including customer due diligence and suspicious activity. What are the red flags for suspicious activity? We'll look at terrorist financing and how to mitigate the risks there. The development of electronic crime and the main systems and controls. We'll then explore the importance of data security, looking at best practice in terms of ensuring sensitive data is not obtained by criminals. We'll spend a unit exploring in depth the concepts of bribery and corruption, the relevant law, as well as best practice in systems and controls to prevent bribery and corruption. For example, the undertaking of due diligence on agents and counterparties. We'll then go on to talk about the managing, prevention and detection of financial crime risks. The importance of systems and controls is key. But any set of systems and controls will be severely weakened if senior management doesn't fully engage. We'll talk about the role of senior management and how effective corporate governance can be embedded in an organisation. We'll explore the impact and risk of insider dealing and market fraud. We'll then also examine corporate frauds and business frauds. So business frauds, for example, that can affect any commercial organisation, not just a regulated entity. For example, we examine payroll frauds, invoicing, and procurement frauds. We'll look at some of the big corporate frauds involving fraudulent accounting and collusion from very, very senior management. And we'll explore the lessons we can learn from these issues manifesting. We then explore financial services fraud, both insider fraud risk as well as external fraud attacks. So we explore fraud in banking, examining, say, credit card, current account type fraud, mortgage fraud. We examine insurance fraud, securities and investment fraud, online money transfer frauds, as well as frauds in other regulated sectors. Finally, we examine the internal investigation of fraud. You are hit by a significant fraud issue within an organisation. Perhaps it's a member of staff who's committed a significant act. How do you undertake a fraud response plan? Who do you interview? How do you collect evidence? How do you deal with law enforcement and regulators to get the desired outcomes? How do you ensure that the lessons are learned and your organisation is never hit again? The key is you should be prepared. And we explore what that means in practice. Finally, we examine the concept of investigation, asset tracing, prosecution and recovery of stolen and corrupt assets through both civil and criminal means. So to come back to the workshops, they're extremely engaging and focused on a very practical level. There will be a mixture of group exercises and case studies and discussions. They're conducted in small, very interactive groups, and they're a fantastic opportunity to undertake benchmarking, develop your peer group networking as well. The assignments, you will have normally a 12-week period to produce these. They're between 2,500 and 3,500 words. And again, there is plenty of support and advice available on undertaking your studies in terms of referencing and research. You know, we're conscious a lot of people haven't studied at this level for years or even at all. So we're able to provide that support, including the offering of a mentor. We have a mentor scheme where we can partner you up with an experienced industry practitioner to act as a sounding board during your studies. Obviously, part of the support and advice we give you is around planning your studies, and we will ensure that you have some tools to ensure some sort of work-life balance as you go through the program, and we'll give you tools to help support you structuring your answers in a logical fashion. To give you an idea of the sort of tone of the assignment questions and the depth, here is an example from an assignment from 2012. You can see the question is talking about jurisdictions that have implemented terrorist financing legislation, which originated from the international initiatives. And the question is broken into two sections. It asks you to A, evaluate recent international initiatives that have been introduced to mitigate the risk of terrorist financing, and asks you to provide analysis on the key legislation within your jurisdiction. And part B asks you to outline 4 terrorist financing typologies and highlight the challenges in detecting these suspicious transactions. Part B of the question asks you to focus on fraud. It puts you in the position of being the fraud prevention and compliance manager for a publicly listed firm which is regulated. You have been involved in an internal audit in the complaints section, and you've seen a significant increase in customer complaints. Much of these complaints related to missing credits to accounts, and you have identified internal fraud. It appears this involves staff paying checks into a bogus account, and the board have asked you to conduct an investigation. You've been asked to assess the impact of the internal fraud on the company and explain how the fraud investigation should proceed, identifying the key stages and establishing why these would be carefully executed as part of the process. The exam itself is 3 hours 15 minutes. It is open book, which means you can take any printed or written material in with you. The only restriction is you're not able to take electronic media, so an iPad or a laptop. So obviously the preparation of your own notes is key. You must answer 2 questions from the factual or theoretical aspect or section, which are more essay-style questions, and you must answer 2 out of 4 from the case study style questions. So to give you an example, you have a case study style question here from a previous exam, which puts you in the shoes of being a financial crime prevention consultant in a jurisdiction of your choice. You've been asked to work with a newly established financial services firm to develop a financial crime prevention framework. The firm is small. It wants a more personalised local service for its clients. Okay. You've noticed in the local newspaper that a salon hairdresser in town was recently raided by law enforcement and has been linked to terrorist financing. And this has prompted you to complete some additional research ahead of the product launch concerning cash-intensive businesses and the risks associated with money laundering and terrorist financing. The question asks you to produce a report for the board explaining how these cash-intensive businesses can be used to front criminal activities and identify the risks in the firm and what can be done to mitigate these risks, along with examples. Okay, so that gives you a flavour for that. In terms of the factual essay-style questions, we have an example here of a quote from the Serious Fraud Office in the UK. And we have the quote is, "A victim is a person, organisation or government who has suffered direct financial loss from the most serious and complex fraud or corruption. Fraud is constantly changing as technology gets more advanced and criminals find new ways to deceive victims." So the question then is, at present there are many fraud scams in operation driven by the intent to deceive individuals and pay dividends to finance a profitable criminal lifestyle. The question is in 2 parts. A, identify 2 fraud-related scam typologies and explain how the money is acquired by the criminal. B, outline the controls a regulated firm should apply in order to detect and mitigate the risks of fraud associated with scams occurring, explaining how the firm could ensure customer awareness in regard to current anti-fraud related scam typologies. So again, we give you plenty of support ahead of the examination in terms of a study guide and advice and support on structuring your studies and managing your time effectively. Again, key will be taking your own notes. You are given extensive further resources and information to research and read, and you are able to use information from your own organisation as well. The overall pass mark for the assessment on the course is a 50% pass, with a 50% average being taken from your 2 assignments, going towards 50% or half your overall marks. Half the course mark is dependent on the examination, and the course can be awarded with either a pass, merit or distinction grade. Well, thank you for your attention. If you have any further questions about the ICA courses, feel free to contact the ICA directly. The email web address rather is at the end of the page on the screen. My own personal Twitter and email is there as well. Thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to being in contact with you on future ICA programs. Thank you.